God doesn't waste pain. I might not have got it all right, but every wrong turn I ever made got me exactly where I was supposed to be. The love that you give to yourself is better than any island. The love that you give to yourself is better than any red carpet. The problem isn't the mistake that you made. Nah, that's not the problem. The problem is allowing your mistake to tell you who you are and staying that way. Every mistake you make is part of your education to graduate into your purpose. You cannot get to greatness without your failures. And then you treat yourself as if every single time you fall short, you're falling outside of the design for your life, when actually you're falling into it. There is not a person on earth who is not struggling with something that comes naturally easy to you. A lot of the time when we're being hard on ourselves because we're not getting the validation from people. But you're never gonna get your fix from broken people. Your mistakes become the wisdom that help the next person coming behind you. That's how you properly recycle the energy so the lesson don't go in vain. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Halfway Up Podcast, and I call it Halfway Up because you're never finished rising. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about don't be too hard on yourself. And that comes from looking no further than my own life, because I think all throughout my life, I've been a perfectionist, and I think part of being a perfectionist is being way too hard on yourself. Looking at yourself through a critical lens and not giving yourself the space and the grace that you actually deserve. And a lot of the time that comes from trying to be perfect, right? Looking at this thing that you created, or looking about the way you went about a situation and reflecting back on it, and not allowing yourself to be to find a place of peace, not allowing yourself to find a place of rest, always looking back on thinking about what you could have done and what you should have did, right? When realistically, there's no such thing as perfection, even if you think you've achieved it, even if you think you get to the point where you did something up to your very high, insane, eccentric standards, you can still years later look back and realize like, oh, I did miss a spot, but I didn't realize it. So perception really is reality. So a lot of the time when we're being too hard on ourselves, it's because we think we're far from perfection, but that's the real trick, because there's no such thing as perfection. That's why the mantra of this podcast is whenever I'm working, I will remember that done is better than perfect. And if I'm satisfied with my work, then that means that I'm living in my purpose. You get what I'm saying? Done is better than perfect. And that's one of the biggest nuggets I want you to keep with yourself as we listen and as we continue to move throughout this conversation of not being too hard on yourself, because there's no reason. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's okay to have high expectations for yourself, because I believe that you should, especially when you're a high achieving person, especially when you're a person who has a desire for excellence. When you have a desire for excellence and you have a desire for giving your best, right? So not only you can make yourself proud, but you can make the people that love you proud too. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think that you should strive for that. I think the bar should be set high so that, they say when you reach for the stars, but you hit the moon, but you made it out of the planet though. You made it into outer space, right? And I think that should be everybody's desire, but it should be less about the fact that like, damn, I didn't get this perfectly right, but it should be more so about the fact that you got somewhere. Life doesn't become better all because of one accomplishment per se. Life is a culmination of things that come together and work in tandem. These different elements and these different nuances, they dance together to create one perfect song, one perfect harmony, right? So try not to get too caught up in this singular mindset of like, damn, I didn't have that conversation the right way. Damn, I didn't go about doing this thing the right way. I didn't make that song the right way. I didn't make that art the right way. I wish I could go back and have that conversation differently. Mistakes is a part of the process. It's actually, mistakes is a beautiful color to throw into the painting. A lot of the time when we think about the colors that we would use to create this beautiful canvas of our lives, right? If we had a blank canvas and we had a nice little palette of colors and we had our paintbrush and we want to create the most beautiful thing, we ignoring the fact that mistakes is a color that's necessary in creating the art. It's a very necessary part of it. There was no such thing as a person, no matter how great they were in this lifetime, where they didn't make mistakes. And so that's something important that I want you to keep in mind when we're talking about not being too hard on yourself. This episode is going to be for all my people that know what it's like to be too hard on yourself and you're tired of it. Me personally, I have been hard on myself for a majority of my life. And I got my reasons. I think that all of my life, I've always felt like an underachiever. I think all of my life, I've always felt like I wasn't good enough. And I always felt like there were people that were better than me. And I always felt like if I was going to get anything out of this life, if I was going to have anything, any accomplishments, any victories, any goals, I would have to work 10 times as hard because I always felt like there were people that were smarter than me. I always felt like there were people that were way more creative than me, way more intelligent than me, just way more gifted than I was. I always felt that way. And because I always felt that way, I felt like, well, if I'm going to have a fighting chance in this life thing, then that means that I got to really show up and show out. And I really got to work harder. I got to be the first one there and the last one to leave because I'm coming from a position in life where I'm not as talented. Now, I don't think about myself in that way as much anymore, but what I can say is that a lot of habits that we develop in a place of survival, sometimes we don't shake them away. Sometimes we grow into the person we were always supposed to be, which is a more loving, a more graceful person. But then also when we grow into this new version of ourselves, as we progress, as we evolve, as we graduate, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that there's a couple things still left with us from that previous life. There's still a couple of traits that once upon a time served us, but it doesn't necessarily serve us anymore. And that's my version of the story. That's my experience when it comes to the subject of not being too hard on yourself, because though I have grown a lot, especially in New York City, there's so much growth that I've had as a young man. There's so many ways of thinking and so many bad habits that I had to unlearn and grow out of. And I did. And I still am. But one thing that I haven't been able to seem to shake is this affinity to being hard on myself. Because once again, I believe that in order for me to get myself out of my situation and to manifest a new one, I gotta be the best. Even though I'm not the best, my aspiration is to be the best every single time. And, one thing about, I think a lot of that comes from, perfection, right? I have a desire to be perfect because I feel like while the other people are effortlessly gifted and while the other people, everything comes so easily to them, like they're so much more talented than me, they're so much more smarter than me. They just got it, right? Whatever the it factor is, the je ne sais quoi, they have it. And I always looked at myself as somebody who had to build it, right? I wasn't born with it, so I had to go create it for myself. And perfection really comes from that. Being too hard on yourself, at least for me, I understand that being hard on yourself doesn't even have to necessarily correlate to perfection. But for me, a lot of the time it did. But one thing I've understood about perfection is it doesn't even exist in the first place. When you think about perfection, you could create something, let's say like 9 times out of 10, you super hard on yourself. It's hard for you to even give yourself your own approval, your own validation. And then one day, right? And then one day, right? 9 times out of 10. So this is that one time out of 9. You finally reach your own expectations. You finally reach your own approval. And let's say 3 years later from that point, you look back and you realize like, I actually missed the spot. And that is just proof that there's no such thing as perfection. There are times where I was going through my MacBook looking for something, and upon me looking for something, I stumbled across some other shit, some shit that I probably did, or some shit that I did or I made several years ago. And then I listened to it. I'm like, yo, this is nice. This is good. Why didn't I share this with the world? Because at that time, I couldn't see it for what it actually was because I was too busy seeing it for what it wasn't, right? And that's a dangerous mindset. And I think that's going to be the foundation of this conversation about not being too hard on yourself, because it's all about perception. And we talk about perception a lot on this podcast. We talk about, personality is your personal reality. Is the cup half empty or is it half full? It's about you. It's never about the thing, and it's about how you see the thing, right? Everything is personified through your own self-image, your own self-reflection. So a lot of the time, the reason we're looking at things for what it isn't, when we could just as easily look at it for what it is, because both things are true. Is it half empty? Yes, it is. Is it half full? Yes, it is. It just depends on the person. One person leads more towards pessimism and the other person leads more toward having an optimistic lifestyle. And I'm not saying you're a wrong person for looking at it pessimistically, because at the end of the day, you are who you are, right? If the optimistic person had the pessimistic person's lifestyle or upbringing, you would probably see it a lot more that way too. And then there are some people who had a terrible lifestyle and then they're just as optimistic as possible, right? So, there is no one size shoe fit all for everybody. But what I can say is that at the end of the day, all of this starts with how you see life. And if we can get to how you see life and change that, then we can get one step closer to living a more enjoyable life and a more comfortable life, right? because nobody's perfect and there's no such thing as perfection. And that's why you shouldn't be too hard on yourself, because you got to understand making mistakes is part of the process. Too many times, we about to get into the episode right now, but too many times in life, we want to paint this perfect picture, right? If you have a canvas and you got your paintbrushes and you got these beautiful array of colors, you only want to use the sexy colors to paint your picture, right? You want to paint the perfect canvas to explain and make sense of what your life is. And you only want to paint the best aspects, completely negating and avoiding the fact that mistakes is a beautiful color that's needed to make the image beautiful. If you was to make a perfect picture and you was to paint this picture and avoid that color of mistake, there would be something that was missing, because through the struggle, through the suffering, through the regret, through the negative aspects that nobody wants to have because it doesn't feel sexy, art is created from that. Beauty is created from that. Progress, love is created from that. Sometimes the greatest form of love comes from the greatest form of pain that you can never achieve because you don't understand the value of love as much, because you know what it feels like to not have it. You get what I'm saying? And that's just how the universe works. I don't make the rules. This is just how God planned it. But I say that to say we can embrace mistakes, and it's not always easy. It's not always easy. I'm not even trying to make it seem like I'm the best at doing it, but hindsight really is 2020. And what I can tell you is that through our mistakes, we can learn to embrace them, because they are helping us get one step closer to our divine purpose that God has put in our lives, whatever that is. And that's what this episode is going to be about. It's a reminder to not be so hard on yourself, you know, because it's never about getting the job done perfectly. You do the best that you can, you make peace with that, and then you move on. And that's why one of the mantras of this podcast is always, whenever I'm working, I will remember that done is better than perfect. And if I'm satisfied with my work, then that means that I'm living in my purpose. And it's a mindset that I really want people to adopt and carry with you throughout your life, because the idea of perfection is holding you back and it's stopping you from enjoying a very great life. Because like I tell you all the time, perfection was never a requirement for the assignment of your life. It was never a requirement. So you're holding yourself to a standard that God doesn't even hold yourself to. And it's not fair to you. You get what I'm saying? Like, God didn't create you to be this incredible person that's just incapable of making mistakes or falling short. That was never part of the programming of your design. When God was creating you, when God put the paintbrushes out to make you as a person, he never said, you know what, I'm gonna make this one perfect. And then you treat yourself as if every single time you fall short, you're falling outside of the design for your life, when actually you're falling into it. Actually, you making the mistakes is actually part of what God created you for, because the mistake is part of how he gets you to learn. You get what I'm saying? So when we try to avoid the mistakes, we're avoiding an opportunity to learn and to become better. And that's not what you were designed for. You were designed to do great things and also fall short, and both things come together to create the perfect person that you are. That's perfection. Perfection is finding the balance of it all. And that's what I want to talk about. And as usual, as always on this podcast, we're going to go over 5 things that I want you to consider when you're being too hard on yourself, and 5 things that I want you to remember, and 5 things that I want you to feel comfortable playing back. Even if you listen to this episode one time, play it back another time when you find yourself being too hard on yourself again. And the first thing that I want to put on your mind, the first thing that I want you to think about is every mistake you make is part of your education to graduate into your purpose. See, a lot of the times when we were in school, we thought to ourselves, if we're not making A's and we're not making B's, then we're failures. Then we're failing. We're wasting our time. We're not fulfilling our purpose. Understanding that education has nothing to do with results. Education is about experience, which is why there are people that never went to college, people that dropped out of high school, are way more successful than people that have degrees, have way more materialistic possessions than the people that went to school and did all the quote unquote right things. And the reason why that is because education is not only limited to the people that went and got degrees and diplomas. Education is about a life experience. And part of your education is the mistakes that you make. If you really want to be honest, there are those of us that avoid the mistakes and don't understand that avoiding the mistake is the reason why you cannot graduate to the things that you actually want. Because there is a lesson and there is a teaching that only exists in falling short. Failure is a part of your education, but nobody ever teaches you that, because they want you to believe that if you're not making A's and you're not making B's, then you're failing in life. Completely losing sight of the fact that failing a test could be the very thing that gives you the motivation and the energy to succeed through the year. And that's the beautiful part about life that so many of us avoid. Like, my story wasn't the story of a person who made straight A's and made B's and was super successful in school, right? That wasn't my story. I felt like I was dumb in school. I felt like I wasn't smart. I almost got held back every year when I was in high school. I had to go to summer school every year when I was in high school. But the failures that I experienced when I was in school prepared me to be a winner in life. And I'm not saying that's the only way. I'm not saying that you got to fail through school or fail through college to be successful in life. Obviously, you could be doing very good through your school year, through your school career, and you could also be doing very good in life outside of that. But for my story is that when I was in school and I was doing bad, I didn't have any teachers letting me know that just because I wasn't doing good here doesn't mean that I'm not going to be doing good outside of that, because they don't want you to believe that. They don't want you to believe that your mistakes can be part of your success. It's like when Kanye said, everything I'm not made me everything I am. That's true. Everything that I experienced in school, all the lack of love and the lack of self-belief that I had in school because I believed that I was only as good as the report cards that I had to bring back home to my mom. I was only as good as the progress reports that I had to bring home to my mom. I was only as good as the grades that I made on my test scores. I was only as good as the grades that I made on my quizzes. All of those things that I experienced developed me into be a person who worked 10 times as hard. And that same energy has inspired me and cultivated the hardworking person that I am today. And I would consider that to be a beautiful thing, but I had to go through that. You get what I'm saying? And so a lot of the time we really disrespect the mistakes because we feel like it has no place in our life. We feel like there's no place in our life for fucking up. We feel like there's no place in our life to fall short. We feel like there's no place in our life to not be perfect, not understanding that falling short and not being perfect is the thing that drives you to being as great as you can possibly be. And a lot of people are not going to tell you that, but look around and pay attention to the results of life. And that's a real big reason why you don't want to be too hard on yourself, because failure teaches you things. When you do something wrong the first time, you have a better chance of doing it right the next time. And very few people in this life do everything right the very first time. And if you are one of those people, shout out to you, because that's an incredible thing, right? But for the most part, all of us learn the hard way in something. There's something that we're not good at inherently. There's something that's difficult for us to wrap our mind around. There's something that's challenging for us to wrap our mind around, something. And the challenges that we face prepare us to be better for it later. Or even so, you got to understand that your mistakes can be used for the greater purpose of you being helpful to somebody else later. Me making a mistake in one area of my life can teach somebody else how to succeed in it when I see them struggling with the same thing. And there's a purpose that came from that mistake. But when somebody succeeds through something, maybe they don't have the empathy or the compassion or the relatability to a person who isn't succeeding with it, right? So maybe that job is so maybe that position is more perfectly suited for the person who struggled with it. And that's purpose. You don't want to be too hard on yourself in this thing called life, because not only are you the only person on your team, but you also got to understand God doesn't waste pain. God takes pain and make the most out of that. Pain is fertilizer for you to really flourish your garden and flourish your flowers. And that's why being too hard on yourself is so unnecessary, because you got to understand God uses everything that happens in your life for your good. Everything. Every single thing that happens to you is going to be utilized to transform you into becoming the final image, the person that you are becoming, because it's not about the destination, but it's about the journey. So you're being formed through this process to become something great. You cannot get to greatness without your failures. You cannot get to greatness without your shortcomings. You cannot get to greatness without your pain. And God uses your pain to make you beautiful. And I know life is all about showing up as your representative self. Life is all about showing up in this perfect ideal version of yourself, because everybody's watching, right? What will they think of me if they see that I'm not Superman? What will they think of me if they see that I'm not a genius? What will they think of me if they see that I don't have it all together? It doesn't matter what they think, because at the end of the day, God is going to take what you've done and he's going to use it for the best. But you got to work with God. Our only job is to collaborate with God. And the best way that we collaborate with God is by trying our best to learn from our lesson, trying your best to learn from your mistake, and trying your best to not repeat that same mistake again. And also giving yourself enough grace to understand sometimes you're not going to get it the first time around. You might have to suffer from that mistake a couple different times. You might have to repeat that mistake a couple different times before you really get it, before the idea really becomes cemented into your mind, and then you don't make it again. But the reason why you don't want to be too hard on yourself, because you got to understand God going to use your pain to make you glorious. God going to use your pain to walk you into your glory. God going to use your pain to walk you into your victory. You got to have, God is going to use your pain to develop your story. You can't have a sexy story without pain. Too many times we're looking at it like it's all about the gold and the trophy and the victories and the accomplishments, not understanding that's also a part of the pain. Not understanding that it's also about it, not understanding that it's also about the pain. It's the pain also that makes your story beautiful. It's the pain also that makes your story sexy. It's the pain also that makes your story worthy to even listen to. You can't relate to a nigga who don't got pain. You can't relate to somebody who ain't never struggled, who ain't never been through tribulations and trials, who ain't never been through trials and tribulations. You can't relate to that person. But you know what you can relate to? The person whose life look like it's just as ugly as yours. That's relatable. Because one thing I can definitely tell you, I might not have got it all right, but every wrong turn I ever made got me exactly where I was supposed to be. I'm glad to be where I am right now. And I got here through the pain. It wasn't just the good times. It wasn't just the people telling me you're doing good and the people cheering for me and the people rooting me on because they were happy for my success. It was also the mistakes that I made, whether I made those mistakes in public or in private. The next thing that I want to talk about when it comes to not being too hard on yourself is there is not a person on earth that is not struggling with something that comes easy to you. There is not a person on earth who is not struggling with something that comes naturally easy to you. And life is fair in that way. Life is fair in that way because everybody has an advantage in somebody else's disadvantage. And everybody's disadvantage is somebody else's advantage. Nobody has it all. Nobody. I don't care who you admire, no matter how talented they are, no matter how smart they are, no matter how strong they are, no matter how beautiful they are. They struggle with something that you would look at and be like, that's nothing. And that's why I don't want you to be too hard on yourself, because I want you to understand that life is really all about perception, right? I need you to understand that there are things that people that you like and you look up to, they struggle with, that comes easy to you. And because there are these things that come easy to you, I want you to stop looking at life and stop looking at everybody like they got something that you don't got. Because for every person that you're looking at for something that you don't got, why aren't you also making space for yourself? You got something that they don't got too. For every step that you're willing to take without thinking is a mile for somebody else. For every step, for every choice that comes effortlessly to you, somebody else got to meditate on it for a long time. Somebody else got to struggle through that. And I want you to think about it in that way because I need you to put a little bit more respect on your name. Don't act like you just out here and you just trash at everything. Don't make it seem like because you took a loss or you didn't do the right thing in this moment that now all of your life is wrong. Don't do that to yourself because it's not fair. It's not fair to you. You know, this world is already so hard. This life already expects so much from you. You got all of social media and every company trying to market to you everything that you're not and trying to tell you what you need. And nobody is, not nearly enough people is here to tell you that you are what you need and you have everything that you need. You just have to give yourself permission to see it in yourself. Sometimes we have to give ourselves permission to be okay because it really is your choice. Because check this out. A lot of the time when we ask people for advice and we feel better, it's because we gave ourselves permission in that moment because we like something that they said, right? And I'm not saying that we didn't need to hear it. I'm not saying that. But you give yourself permission. They didn't come through and just give you a key. You accepted the key that was already inside of you. It was already there, but you just couldn't see it. And that's why it's important to live a happy, and that's why it's so important. And that's why it's so important to live as healthy of a lifestyle as humanly possible, because the less healthy you are, the harder it is for you to see the keys that you already have to unlock every single door that you feel like you're stuck behind, because we have them. And when we get our rest and when we drink our water and when we eat proper meals and then we have good social community and we have these things and we're living a fulfilling life because we're living within our purpose, it's easy for us to see that we can empower ourselves, that we have what it takes to get us to where we want to be. The difference between where we are and where we want to be. We have that power. We have that power. The thing that's light work for you is very heavy lifting for somebody else. Somebody else has to work years and years and years to get what you can have within a snap of your fingers. Give yourself the permission to understand that and embody that and to walk in that. You get what I'm saying? A lot of us got privileges that we don't even pay attention to because it's so normal to us, right? Because we so used to having it, not understanding that there are talents and intelligence and ways of how we live and the ways we go about our life that we have that other people are praying for. There are things that come naturally to me that somebody else would love to have. They praying, asking God to give them. There are things that you do that come so easy, so natural to you that other people would cut their arm off to have. But we don't even pay attention to it and we neglect it because we used to it. Now we got to find ways to constantly fall in love with the beauty and the gift of us. It's a beautiful thing being you. Don't ever get too tired being yourself. Don't ever get complacent being you. Don't ever get used to being you. Why would you do that? Don't you know you don't have nothing else if you don't have that? Don't ever fall out of love of being yourself. Don't ever fall out of love of celebrating yourself. Don't ever fall out of love of acknowledging and being a fan of you. Always be a fan of you. And a lot of the times we too hard on ourselves because we losing sight of the fact that, man, put some respect on your name, man. Why would I be more of a fan of somebody else before I'm a fan of myself, knowing that they struggle with something that comes easy to me? So yeah, you might be famous for your gift. I might not be famous for my gift, but that doesn't make my gift any less powerful than yours. I hope y'all get what I'm saying by that. So let's move on. The next thing that I want you to consider is the problem isn't the mistake that you made. Nah, that's not the problem. The problem is allowing your mistake to tell you who you are and staying that way. When we be making mistakes sometimes, we don't just give ourselves a slap on the wrist and allow ourselves to grow from that moment. We look at it like a sentence that we got to serve, right? So you look at the mistake like a crime, and then you giving yourself a lifetime sentence, staying in it way longer than you supposed to, right? You supposed to been free. If this was jail terms, you supposed to been free into the real world. You serve your time, but we stay behind the bars while the door is wide open. And we do that to ourselves a lot of the time when it comes to these mistakes that we make. You got to understand that there's no person in this world that doesn't make mistakes. You know, because here in the western part of the world and in America, we're influenced to look at people like they're better than us and they got so much more going on than us in life, right? And because of that, we lose sight of the fact that these people make mistakes too. And it is so unfortunate that in this life, when we make these mistakes, we treat it like a life sentence when the door is wide open. We can feel better the minute we decide to feel better. You can feel better the minute you decide to feel better. And a lot of the time, we don't choose to feel better about our life until we've had enough. And I'm trying to tell you, I want this podcast to be a reminder to tell you that you don't got to wait all that time. You don't got to wait until you drug yourself all the way through the mud and you at the bottom of the low. You at the lowest of the low, the bottom of the bottom, to wait to decide, you know what? I want better for myself. You can make that decision right now. You can make that decision today. You can want better for yourself, man. You don't have to overstay your welcome when you made a mistake. Get the lesson from it and move on. If you really want to show us that you're sorry, if you really want to prove to yourself that you're sorry, then prove it with your actions. Don't overstay your welcome and feeling sorry for yourself because you're not helping nobody when you do that. If you really want to help the world and you really want to help yourself, show us that you learn from your mistakes. Show us that you know why what you did was wrong, and now show us that you can do it right. Show us that you can enter back into society and enter back into your relationship and enter back into that situation a better person, a changed man, a changed woman. Don't keep hurting yourself because that only shows us that you're addicted to feeling bad for yourself. Show us that you can be better because you deserve that much. But what you don't deserve is overstaying your welcome for a punishment that's not worthy of the crime. Because a lot of the time, the mistakes that we're making are really petty. They're really minor crimes, but we're giving ourselves serious lifetime third offense sentences. And it doesn't have to be that way. A mistake should only be a moment in your time. It should never become your identity. Your mistake shouldn't be somebody that you eventually become because you're more than that. That's so terrible to allow your mistake to become who you are, as if who you are is not filled with so many incredible things. There's so many dope aspects to who you are. There's so many times when you did the right thing. There's so many times when you loved on somebody, when you supported somebody, when you gave somebody an encouraging word of advice. There's so many times when you did something beautiful. To allow your mistake to now become your ultimate identity that's wrong, bro. Your past is your past for a reason. It's because it's behind you. You passed it. So if you find your past constantly living in the present and the future with you, that's because you're allowing it to stay there. And you have to give yourself permission to let it go. Drop the bags because you know it's heavy in the first place. You're carrying this baggage and it's heavy. Don't you want free hands to hold your blessings? Don't you want to make space to receive some beautiful things in life? Let go of the past, bro. Let go of what happened to you. Let go of the fact that you fucked that situation up. I know you fucked that situation up. Let it go. I know you said the wrong thing in that situation. Let it go. I know you didn't spend that money the right way. Let it go. I know you didn't show up for them in the way that you should have because they was there for you. Let it go. If you really want to show us that you learned from your mistake, then show us with your actions. You're not doing anything for us when you continue to hurt yourself when that situation happened 6 years ago. You're not doing anything to show us that you really learned from your mistake when that situation happened 3 months ago and you still beating yourself up in the head about it. How are you helping anybody? And if you're not helping yourself, then you can never help us because you're too busy losing the fight against you. How can you be strong for somebody else when you're too busy being weak for yourself? You can't. So I need you to get yourself right and give yourself permission to let go, forgive yourself, and move on. And before we move on to the next part, remember, making mistakes is an unnegotiable part of your life journey, but staying in your mistakes, that's optional. Suffering is always optional. Falling short, gonna happen. I guarantee it. I promise you. But continuing to suffer from that mistake, that's the thing that you continue to choose over and over again. And you don't have to. The next thing I want you to consider when you're being too hard on yourself is there are so many things that are working against you in this life. There's so many companies that are trying to market you conversations and imagery. There's so many companies that are trying to market you and suggest to you images of what you're not. There's so many people making content. There's so much music. There's so many movies. There's so much TV shows. There's so many things that are trying to let you know without telling you in your subconscious mind that you're not enough. So many things are working against you. You gotta be your best friend. You gotta be the person who wants the best for you because everybody else is too busy figuring out what works best for them. And because they're too busy working toward what works best for them, they don't got time to think about what works best for you. Because looking for what works best for me is already a full-time job. It's already a full-time job. And that is why it is so important for you to advocate for yourself. That is why it is so important for you to make sure that you got what you need because ain't nobody gonna get you right like you gonna do it. So you gotta stop being so hard on yourself. Because a lot of the time when we're being hard on ourselves, it's because we're not getting the validation from people that we look up to, people that we think are cool, people that we think have done more than us. But you're never gonna get your fix from broken people. And then a lot of these people that we look up to, they broken people. A lot of these people that we think so cool, we think they got the money, we think they flying around the world, we think they doing so many cool things, and we think that they're better than us because we're not doing them things. Those people are broken. The money doesn't mean that the person's not broken. The houses, the cars, the access to resources and wealth, that doesn't mean these people not broken. It doesn't mean you don't know what type of images they see in their mind. You don't know what type of things that they tell themselves. You don't know that. So a lot of time we being too hard on ourselves because we're not getting approval from somebody we think is at the top when really we could be higher than them. But we place ourselves below them because we act like our value is less because we don't have the material things that they got. Now understanding you could be getting a better night's rest than them. They could have a Lamborghini outside the house. They could have a 3-car garage, 3-story mansion. They could have all that. And then you sleep better at night. When you walking down the street, when you getting into your Honda, you feel better about yourself than they feel getting into their Bugatti because what you have is not a reflection of who you are. And the minute we realize that, we'll understand that it's a lot easier to not be so hard on yourself because your value is not attached to what you don't have. There are people in this world, they go on stages in front of thousands of people and they get off of that stage and they feel depressed. They're sad. They have a lack of fulfillment. They're not content with their life. Things that people would die for. Things that people would do anything just to experience for a day. And it doesn't console them. And that is because the only true value in this life is the value of the love that you give to yourself, not the value of love that you get from other people. It's not about the love that you get from other people. That'll never hold you down. It might make you feel good for a minute. It might get you at least going for a little bit, but the thing that's going to allow you to live versus survive is the love that you give to yourself. The survivors are the people that are not loving themselves. The livers are the people that are. The people that are living, they love themselves. It don't matter how big their kitchen is, how big their car is, how big their garage is, how many stories they got in their house. That's not what it's about. That's not how you place the real victories in this life. The real trophies, the way we keep score in this life is how well somebody loves themselves. There are people that have everything, but the one thing that matters the most, the one thing that God wants you to have the most is loving yourself and having a connection with him. And there are people who have everything but that. And you know what that means? They're broke. The people who have all the possessions, but they don't got a relationship with God, broke. The people who got all the money, all the things, take all the trips, travel all around the world, got all the clothes, but they don't have a relationship with themselves where they love, but they don't love themselves, they broke. They are broke people. It's called being morally bankrupt. They are bankrupt. So we looking at them from the outside looking in, thinking they got everything there is. But in the Bible, it says, what benefit is it for you to gain the world but lose your soul? You got to understand the love that you have with God and the love that you give to yourself is the only way out of this world alive. You're not going to make it out of this world alive. I don't care how many victories you get along the way. I don't care how many cars you get. I don't care how many relationships with people that you get. I don't care how many places you travel. You will feel empty in those places. You'll feel empty because the love, you got to give it to yourself. The love that you give to yourself is better than any island. The love that you give to yourself is better than any piece of jewelry. The love that you give to yourself is better than any red carpet. The love that you give to yourself is better than any song. It's better than any dish. It's better than anything. It's the love that you give to yourself. The winners love themselves. The losers don't. And we got to stop looking at life like because a person got a lot of possessions that they doing better than you. We got to stop that. That is the biggest trick that we have been suggested to in America. We've been tricked. We have been finessed into believing that because somebody got more things that they are better than us. It is a sickness. You wondering why you can't win. You wondering why you feel like you're spinning your wheels. It's because you're shooting for everything other than the thing that you already got. Always looking outside of yourself because they made you believe that you don't already have it. The world will make you chase this idea of perfection. But the beauty of life is in your mistakes. Your mistakes don't make you a bad person. Your mistakes are the trampoline for you to springboard yourself into becoming a better person. And you only ever really fail when you learn the lesson from your mistake and you keep making it. Then you can feel bad about yourself. Then you can feel bad about what you're not doing because you know better, but you're not doing better. And listen, the last thing that I want to talk about this is something that I think is really, really important that not enough people consider and think about when it comes to being too hard on yourself. Your mistakes become the wisdom that help the next person coming behind you. That's how you properly recycle the energy so the lesson don't go in vain. That's how you properly recycle the energy so the failure is not in vain. You get what I'm saying? So your mistakes is what qualifies you to help somebody. And too many times we being so selfish and we being so self-centered that we looking at the mistake like, oh, fuck, because I dropped the ball or because I didn't do the right thing or I could have did better, that you don't have value to give or you don't have purpose to give. Not understanding that what if you went through that thing? So by the time you met somebody else who looked like they was getting ready, about to go through it, you can tell them how to avoid it. You can help somebody not make the same mistake that you made. And that's the beautiful thing that comes with making mistakes sometimes. The purpose goes beyond just the lived experience that we're having. Sometimes you can share that information and share that wisdom and share that education and you can enlighten somebody else. That's how you properly recycle the energy. That's how you make sure that what you went through wasn't experienced for any reason at all. You can educate people. You can help people avoid what you went through. You can enlighten people. You can show people the way. You can be a leader in your space. You can be a leader. You can be a teacher. You can be an educator. You can take your wisdom and help somebody live a better life because of it. And that's the thing about this life. We're all put here on earth to teach each other. I believe that the purpose of life is passing down information, and energy is a domino effect. The energy continues to go. That might have been your pain, but that can be somebody else's blessing. And you don't even give yourself an opportunity to get to that place when you're too busy living in your own misery. You know what I'm saying? When you're too busy being addicted to feeling sorry for yourself. You can create light from your darkness. Everybody has an opportunity to create light from their darkness. And one of the number one ways you can do that is by helping somebody learn so they don't got to go through what you went through. It's like Hov say, Hov did that so you ain't got to do that. You can learn from somebody else's mistakes vicariously. That's why vicarious is one of my favorite words. It's because just by paying attention or just by somebody taking the time to speak to you, you can be that person that take the time to speak to somebody. All of my life, I wanted a mentor. All of my life, I wanted to sit next to somebody and learn from somebody who did what I was trying to do. All my life, I just wanted to be next to somebody who had already been where I was trying to go. I never had that opportunity. I never had the chance to get next to somebody who cared enough to just slow down and just teach me something, to educate me, to give me provision, to share their wisdom with me so that I could so that I don't got to go through the mistakes that they went through, right? So I can get where they got to 10 times faster. Nobody ever did that for me. But through that experience, though I never had that, now when I'm growing and I'm becoming stronger and I'm becoming smarter and I'm becoming more capable and I'm gaining my wisdom, I can be that blessing to somebody that somebody wasn't able to be to me. And that's what this life is all about. It's about passing down the information. It's about allowing the energy to be a domino effect and keep the good energy flowing and going. You can be to somebody else what somebody wasn't for you. And that's how you don't allow the energy to die in vain. That's how you recycle the energy with purpose. That's how you can live with your purpose. That's how you can transform the energy, by understanding that your mistakes can be the wisdom to help the next person coming behind you. Because somebody's coming behind you. And it might be your brother, it might be your sister, or it might be some friends you meet along the way. And growth is not a linear process. Just because somebody is older than you doesn't mean they know what you know. You can still be a blessing. And I want you to think about that before you get too carried away with counting yourself out. Before you get ahead of yourself and tell yourself what you're not worthy of because you made a mistake. Before you tell yourself that you're not qualified or you're not capable, I got a better way for you to look at it. Simply just because you made a mistake, simply just because you failed, simply just because you fell short, that qualifies you to educate somebody. That qualifies you to be a blessing to somebody. Now, the question is, can you get out of your own way in time enough to do that? Don't be the only thing that's in your way to stop you from being a blessing for somebody else. Because then at that point, you're truly being selfish. And we were not put here on this earth to only help ourselves. We were brought here on this earth to be a blessing to others. Life is about giving. It's very little about the receiving. And the real trick of it is when you focus on giving, you receive back in return. You don't got to worry about getting yours when you're giving to others. You don't have to worry about that because that's what it means to be a good person. And that's how you live a fulfilling life. That's how you live a life that's truly worth living. Whenever somebody is too busy focused on getting and gimme, you're not going to get nothing. Or at least whatever you get, it's not going to nearly be as impactful and as fruitful as when you dedicate your life to being of service to others. When you're trying to give value to other people, that's when you give value back. That's how God show love to his children. That's how God makes sure you get what you need because you made sure that you was a blessing to somebody else. So don't hide your scars. Don't hide your flaws. Don't hide your mistakes. Don't hide your failures because that could be the very thing that somebody else need to not make the same mistake. That could be the very thing that somebody need as motivation and inspiration to be better. They can be better than you, and that's what we should want. We should want people to be better than us, and the only way that we can do that is by telling them where we fell short and not being scared to admit that. A lot of the time, we scared to admit our flaws. We don't want people to see that we're not as smart. We don't want people to see that we're not as creative because we're afraid of how they're going to use it against us. My motto is, yo, fuck you. You're not paying my bills. You're not paying my rent. You're not going to give me a home. You're not going to give me shelter when I need it the most. You're not going to feed me. At the end of the day, all that matters is how God perceives me. Yeah, I want my friends to like me. Yeah, I want my parents to respect me. Yeah, I want people to see that I'm doing good in the earth, and I want people to acknowledge that. I want all that. I'm not saying I don't want that. I'm human. Of course I want those things. But at the end of the day, I cannot allow my desire for validation from them to be higher than my validation from God. Because only one of them is going to keep me safe in this life. Only one of these is going to make me feel comfortable, really. I can have validation from 100,000 people and still go home being depressed. It happens every single day. How many artists go on stages? They get all the love. They on tour. They can buy anything they want. They're not happy because they're not right with the Lord. Because they're not right with the big homie. So at the end of the day, don't be so afraid of people judging you because you fell short. because they falling short too. And maybe they falling short in privacy. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes when you're trying to do something great in life, you got to make your mistakes in front of people. When you're trying to do something great in life, you got to fall short and you got to have failure while the world is watching. But you can't care about how people think, because that's the thing that's going to stop you from getting to the place that you want to go. If you care too much about how people think, it's going to be a very difficult journey to get to the places that you really see, that you see for yourself, the places that you know that you possibly could get. When you following them, you're going to fail. But when you following him, you're going to grow. And I promise you that. There's no substance in following them. There's no substance in caring too deeply about how they feel. Because what are you going to say when God is putting you on a journey that's far away from the validation of others? What are you going to say when God has a journey for you and has a mission for you that's going to take you somewhere where they not? What you going to do? You can't get your charge. You can't get your plug from them. You can't get fixed by broken people. You got to stay connected to something that's real, something that's true, something that's greater than yourself. And that's not the validation of others. Allow your story to be the blueprint for somebody else. Allow your story to be the motivation to help somebody where you fell short. Don't allow your lessons to go wasted because you're scared to share them, or because you're scared to show people that you bleed, to show people that you're actually human. And most importantly, don't be too hard on yourself, man. And again, all of this is advice. All of this is wisdom coming from a person that has always been too hard on myself. And I'm not saying that I got it all figured out, but I have been doing that work. And this conversation and these points that I've made in this conversation, these 5 points that I've made, these are all things that I've developed along the way. These are all things that have helped me grow. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, though life is hard and though life is a struggle in a lot of ways, we're supposed to enjoy it because it's so limited. You know, we don't know when the Lord is going to call us home. And so every day that you get above ground, we should be trying our best to make the most of it. I'm not saying that it's always going to be easy, but I am saying being too hard on yourself is kind of like, it's just kind of like wasting a lot of your life. It's not even for a valid reason. It's not even for a noble reason, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like you have to enjoy it because you only get one. And it's hard to enjoy your life when you're being a little too hard on yourself. So that's it, man. That's it. That's the only thing that I want y'all to get from this conversation. I hope it's useful to you. I hope it's helpful. And you already know, before I sign off, the outro, the mantra, the religion, the spirit of the brand. Whenever I'm working, I will remember that done is better than perfect. And if I'm satisfied with my work, then that means that I'm living in my purpose. This is the Halfway Up Podcast. I am Wolf Taylor. I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're new here, welcome. Feel free to listen to any of the other episodes. I'm sure I've talked about something that can relate to you. And if there is something that I haven't talked about that you think that I should, please let me know. Let's create a community. I got some great things that I'm working on. I'm working on a card game. I'm working on 2 card games, actually. I'm gonna bring merch back around for sure, but I think there's a better value that I can bring to people than clothes at the moment. And those are the things that I'm working on right now. And I'm even working on, I wrote a book. I don't know when I'm gonna share the book. I'm probably gonna share that in Patreon too. So that's something else that's gonna be for the people that's in the Patreon. I'm gonna have the LA vlog. I'm going to have the book. You know what? I'll probably have the book on Patreon temporarily just so people can kind of get a feel for it before I actually release it and start selling it. Because what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to sell 50 copies. And then I'm also going to have a digital download. And then I'm also going to have an audio version of the book. And then I'm also probably going to break the book down into like a video series that's more so like, I don't want to say too much about the book, but the title of the book, at least right now, the working title that I got is The Spiritual Mindset to Making Content. So I'm probably going to turn it into a course for people who want to make content themselves. And so I'm going to break the book down in a couple of different ways. It's going to be, you can buy the physical. It's probably only going to be 50 and I'm never going to print it again. So you got to get it while you can. There's going to be the audio version that I'm going to narrate myself. There's the digital download. You can download as a PDF. And then there's going to be the version where I kind of break it down into almost like a lecture for everybody who wants to really learn how to get into content and to have more success with it. Because I get it. Sometimes you can have analysis paralysis and not really know where you could find yourself fitting into it. But I think that I can help you with that. And so, yeah, there's going to be the vlog. There's going to be the book. And then there's an episode that I've been sitting on for a minute. And the episode is titled, I Don't Understand God. And I think it's an interesting episode. I didn't put it out because I just didn't feel 100% comfortable being that vulnerable. But if anybody cares enough to, if you want to hear it, it'll be the first episode that is on my Patreon. And so, yeah, there are going to be some things that are there. There's some things that are there. I'm still working on the vlog. It's almost done. The book is done. That podcast episode is done. But yeah, there are going to be some things. And so I love you guys. I hope you're doing good. You know what? Before I leave, let me pray for y'all real quick. Because I feel like that's something that I tried to do once upon a time, but I want to do more of that. Because I really want this community to be, I want people to understand that this really is about love to me. This isn't about like me just asking people. It's like there's a lot of numbers when you go viral, and there's a lot of numbers when you just put out content in general. How many people listen? How many people shared? How many people liked? But every single one of those people is an actual human being. And this work that I'm doing, these conversations that I'm having, it really comes from love. And because it comes from love, I can't do anything else but extend love back to you. So I'm gonna have this word of prayer with y'all, and then we're gonna bounce up out of here. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for allowing every single person that is alive to be here in this moment, because I know there's no such thing as coincidence. God, I don't know what these people are going through. I don't know what they're struggling with. I don't know what they're facing. I don't know what they're challenged with. But I ask you that you will give them the tools and give them the strength to not be so hard on themselves, because that's what this episode was all about. I ask you that you will give them the strength to not be so hard on themselves and understand the truth in these words that everybody is struggling with something. And that's how you know life is fair. And a lot of times, the things that we're dealing with, the cards that we've been dealt, we look at our situation and we feel bad for ourselves because we feel like life isn't fair. But if we could take a step back and see the bigger picture, we understand that there's nobody here that is not struggling with something. And that's where the fairness comes from. Lord, I ask you that you will teach everybody how to love themselves more. Teach everybody how to respect themselves better. I ask you that everything that they're aspiring for, all the dreams that they have, every single aspiration they have, Lord, I ask you that you will order their footsteps. So even when it feels like they're lost, even when it feels like they're walking in the dark, that they're still walking in the right direction the whole time, whether they knew it or not. I ask you that you will teach us all how to love ourselves just a little better, God, because life really is hard, and it's easy to think about ourselves as not being valuable because of everything that we don't have. But I ask you that you will teach us all, including myself, that we are valuable because of everything that we do. And life is never about what we don't have, but it's always about what we do have. And everything that we have is all that we need to get what we say we want to get done. And I ask you to continue to just heal us, Lord. There's so many people that are suffering. There's so many people that are in pain and silence. They show up every day at work, doing what they got to do. They show up every day around their friends and their family, doing what they got to do. But when they in privacy, it's hard. And I ask you that you will send the help, Lord, no matter what that looks like, whether it's a person, whether it's money, whether it's resources, or whether it's an opportunity. Please send the help that people need so they can continue to fight the good fight, because we're only human. And I know that you know that, God. So I thank you for that. I thank you for giving me this podcast, Lord. I thank you for giving me the inspiration to come up with these topics when I do, because I only want to talk about things that you put on my mind. So thank you for giving me the inspiration to talk about these things. And I hope that these messages come to my mind so they can find the people who need them the most. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I love you guys. Peace.